Trump, the first former president to be convicted of a crime, and I think all of us are still sort of in shock over it. We're going to be talking about it, of course, this morning. Stephanie's back from a day off on assignment, and we certainly going to want to hear what you have to say about what's going on coming down the pike. There, of course, there's the political discussion, the legal discussion. It's going to be something, Stephanie. And, of course, Hannah, we got to make sure and talk about some really feel-good stuff that's happening tonight and tomorrow with the 9/11. We got a lot of good stuff. The stair climb, 9/11 stair climb. We got John to cover a lot of local things along with Brian. So we have a big show planned for you. Kip Kendrick will be with us at 7:08. And tons to talk about. And, of course, you need to weigh in, ladies and gentlemen, on the happenings of yesterday, a day that will live in infamy, legally, I think, in America. 573-874-9390. Now, Stephanie, I think many of us are not. I'm disappointed, but not surprised. What are some adjectives that you're thinking about as this rolls through your mind overnight?
I think that's fair. I think disappointment is a big one. I think whenever I'm, talking to a client and I say, and I feel like they've been wronged and they feel like they've been wronged, I think, you think if we can just get into court and explain our story to the judge, I like to be able to tell my client you're going to get a fair shake. And I think getting out from under whatever, wrong you're being wronged, if we can get over here, we can tell your story, you're going to get, once you're aired out, it's going to be a fair look at what your issue is. And I think for a lot of people yesterday and in watching the trial over the last weeks, it was apparent that it doesn't really feel like Trump got a fair shake. And that's disappointing to me as a lawyer, knowing that sometimes you're not going to it doesn't appear that you're going to get a fair shake. And I don't think Trump got a fair shake here. I mean, even in the motion practice, the judge ruled, against Trump, I think 99% of the time. We talked about, he couldn't get a venue change. He's got the jury in an area that we knew was unfavorable to him. So I think you're right, Randy. I don't think anyone was surprised. I'm a little bit surprised by the reactions.
How's that?
I think conservative Twitter lost its mind a little bit.
Man.
A little bit. That's an understatement.
Okay, a lot. And it got a little bit weird yesterday. I'm not surprised that apparently we broke Trump's fundraising website, and I'm very excited about that. And I'm sure he's going to put the numbers out at some point. I bet yesterday is the single best day Trump's had on the fundraising front.
One donor donated $300,000. Another guy who's, one of the campaign dudes said that he had garnered $800,000. I mean, it's amazing. This was in the first hour or so afterwards.
Yeah, and the website was down a little bit, but people were posting their screenshots of their donating. But even in Missouri, like the responses I felt were like a little bit bizarre. And I think we should have played bingo a little bit with how the responses came out, because it seemed like there was a race to be first to make a statement. And then there was also like, it was like if you got a picture with Trump in your statement, you got more points. I think all of the words were the same, except they were just mixed up in a different order, like you shook them up and spit them back out.
Now, I purposely didn't spend a lot of time looking at the post-Trump Twitter, just because I figured it was going to be
It was a lot.
Crazy. So
I will say...
What examples are we talking about, ladies? And John, what are we talking about?
How about Jesse Waters from Fox News? What was his line? He said, we're going to vanquish the evil forces that are destroying the republic.
And that is one response that I didn't like. So I think you get 5 points if you mention Banana Republic, George Soros, rigged,
kangaroo court,
weaponization, kangaroo court, unprecedented. I mean, everyone's response was very similar. It was like they all put it in ChatGPT and it spit it back out. I wish I would have seen some more, like, rather than just word salad, some more like legal analysis, I guess. I don't know. And then I did see, especially from some conservative commentators, similar to Jesse Waters, but I think I saw it out of like Clay and Buck. Like, it's now incumbent on all Republican prosecutors to start to do the opposite, to prosecute all the Democrats, haul them into court.
Yep.
And I don't think that's the right answer.
That's the
Daily
same
Wire's
issue.
Matt Walsh, yeah.
I don't know.
He echoed that exactly.
Yeah,
I don't think that's the right answer.
I am so conflicted over how right, and I mean in a moral, universal law, biblical, name your good book you want to name if you're not a Christian. I don't know how to handle this. The more that Republicans have been nice guys, whether it's been in the political scene or now we see in the judicial scene and in the sort of the hands-off of ex-presidents. Remember how many people, I mean, go back to Eric Holder. He lied to Congress. He wasn't prosecuted. Donald Trump, after all the invective about lock her up, remember, he chose not to prosecute Hillary Clinton, or at least his Justice Department did. Whether or not he had I think he said something afterwards. I mean, maybe, I don't know. It's like there's two realms that my mind is working on. There's one very solemn, quiet. I read some Bible last night. I thought, you know what? Feels good, because you know what? You can't trust the human being to do the right thing when the human being is ambitious and has power.
Yeah, that's a good point. You know, I think for a lot of people they think when you talk about Bible verses, you think about, if anybody slaps you on the right cheek, turn the other cheek, and you turn back to the Old Testament, it was eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth.
And a lot of conservative Twitter yesterday was eye for an eye. And I think it was, obviously people are upset in the moment. I kind of agree with James, too, who's texting us. And he said, I can't believe not one juror said not guilty. Absolutely gutless. Remember when people thought New Yorkers were tough? And I think, I'm not totally surprised, but I think I was holding out a little bit of hope. I am not going, and I think the other thing is I have no hope, I guess, or I'm hopeful. I am confident that this will be overturned on appeal. I don't think it's going to stand. Now, it's going to be a long time, right? But I don't think this is
our pastor's going on sabbatical for a few months. We were covering Philippians the last month. And this last Sunday, the verse that he spoke on, one of the verses was out of Philippians 4, verse 8. Finally, brethren, whatever is true, whatever is honorable, whatever is right, whatever is pure, whatever is lovely, whatever is of good repute, if there is any excellence and if anything worthy of praise, dwell on these things. I got to tell you, I understand today more than ever. You know how I scratch my head so often? I think we all do, and say, "How can you look at what's going on? Whether it's if it's the more local or the more important, or whether it's on the federal, you guys got to get involved." It's weird. I can't understand people who aren't engaged. Today, I'm almost more engaged disengaged than I've ever been. It's like, forget it. It's all over. The country's over. You can't trust anyone at any time when they get ambition and power, because they're going to abuse it. And we better start taking care of one another at a very interpersonal level, our families, our communities, our civic organizations, because who else you can't trust anyone at any level of major power, because they are going to abuse it. And I'm like, it makes you want to just check out. It makes you, from the indictment to what happened yesterday, you go, the heck with it. I'm done with it.
I think when we see the fundraising numbers from yesterday, it's going to be pretty clear that people aren't checking out, and that rather than being done with it, they are energized to come out to make sure, just as Trump said in his speech after the conviction, that the real judgment day is on November 5th.
Yeah, and I guess I'm just saying I have empathy for people that, instead of getting stressed about getting engaged
that
with
are anarchists,
and seeing their and seeing their blood pressure go up.
Yeah,
it's like, wow, I can't really. It's so obviously wrong, and yet it got through. And you go, my God, what am I doing that I don't know, with all the statutes that are out there, that some prosecutor may go after me because they got some axe to grind against my second cousin that once was their girlfriend. You know what I mean? I just don't know anymore.
Yeah, I think at those moments I start fantasizing about like homesteading and bunkering and like getting off the grid or whatever. And there are moments of that.
It crosses my mind. It's like, man, I'm just going to dig in and do what I need to do for Randy and his family and my friends here on Wake Up Mid-Missouri and the people that listen to us. The heck with the rest of the world.
But that's not what you're called to do. You're called to make it better.
Whatever is true, honorable, right. Is any prosecutor capable of that anymore? Is any judge capable of that anymore? Lady Justice now has blindfold made of cellophane. And I'm afraid every American now thinks that this applies to every court, and every prosecutor in America. I am calling on all of you to stand up tall, prosecute real crime, and a victimless crime like this, if it was a crime, please don't ever think about using your bias or your political ambitions or your power to abuse it for a person that didn't hurt anyone. This didn't hurt anyone. Okay, I'm done. Hauswirth, your turn.
Well, I think in terms of, obviously, the Republicans that support President Trump, and they were holding out hope that there would be a hung jury, at least one or two hung jurors. That was not the case. Stephanie brings up a very good point. The former president's supporters are confident it will be overturned on appeal. We'll see, but that's going to take some time. Remember, this is a jury in Manhattan, New York, folks. I mean, that's, Biden probably carried that 85% somewhere in there.
Where all the money and all the power in these United States and in the world resides. That makes my point.
Well,
all is lost.
At one time,
all is lost.
At one time in your lifetime, Randy, that was a Republican area. I mean, Thomas E. Dewey was the governor of New York. It's just... It has changed, but we do have a lot of positive things going on.
And you're going to talk later on Seawood's State of the City address?
Seawood's State of the City address was a big deal, and a chance also to mention the memorial stair climb tomorrow.
Let's talk about the memorial.
Morning.
Let's talk about Seawood's State of the City address at 6:35. Okay, because we're going to be circling back around to the Trump thing and garnering your text all morning. Joe is online. Joe, you got 35 seconds. I'm sorry, man. We don't have much time.
No, that's all right. I like to hear your excitement. If anything, yesterday just brought us all closer together down here at the lower levels. This is just such a big deal because, we're seeing somebody who is at, usually you can see things like this in a courtroom happen, and it happens, I think, to people who are like impoverished or something like that all the time. But yesterday it united all of us.
It's
black, white, it don't matter. And we're going to stop tiptoeing around things. We're going to have some backbone. That's what America needs. Backbone, and you need to say your piece and stand on it.
America will speak on November 5th. I feel that strongly. In the meantime, we need
happened here.
Time for the Daily DC Rundown with Stephanie Bell.
All right, so we got the verdict. That is driving the day today. I don't think we'll talk about much else or anyone else. We know Trump's having a press conference today, right, Randy? I think, is it 10 a.m.
Yep.
Central or is that Eastern?
11 Central, 10
Got it.
11 Eastern, 10 Central. So 10 o'clock our time.
All right, so let's talk a little bit about what this means for Trump. According to just the U.S. Constitution, he can still run for president. They have set the sentencing date. That's 4 days before the convention. I think it's like, what, July 11th?
Yep.
11.
7/11.
So he will get sentenced that day. It is not expected that, people are like, he's going to go to prison. It's not. He's probably not going to go to prison. He's a first-time offender. The way their laws work, like the fact that it was 34 counts of the same type of thing, I guess, doesn't really compound. So a lot of folks are saying
It's not additive?
he really should not go to prison. But what the sentence will ultimately be.
A lot of folks said he shouldn't have been convicted,
Well,
Stephanie.
there you go. There you go. So we will see. His team has said they are going to appeal, but of course there won't be any real rush on that, and it is likely to take a rather long time. So we will continue to keep our eyes on the Trump case. Now, that verdict completely eclipsed what it was a big deal in the Supreme Court yesterday morning in this NRA case. It was a First Amendment dispute, and it goes all the way back to 2017. And if you remember, there was the Parkland shooting, and this was in New York. Her name is, Vuolo, and she
Maria Vuolo.
Yes, and essentially, she was the head of New York's Department of Financial Services, and she started threatening those that she regulates, banks and other financial institutions, and said, hey, if you're dealing with the NRA, I'm threatening enforcement against you. The NRA, and so people started, these banks and financial institutions actually started cutting ties with the NRA. The NRA sued, and it worked its way up to the Second Circuit, and in that case, the Second Circuit essentially said, there's not enough here, and threw the case out. The NRA went to the Supreme Court, and it was a unanimous decision yesterday to reinstate the case. And what was said, Sotomayor wrote the decision, and she said, what New York couldn't do was, and Vuolo couldn't do, was use her power as the head of the department to threaten enforcement actions against entities the department regulated to punish or suppress the NRA's gun-promoted advocacy. So it's a First Amendment case, and I think that's a really big deal. Once your government starts saying you can, picking winners and losers and saying, got some really good ones. So touch up on your
That's
Gavin
gonna be
DeGraw.
cool.
Oh, it's going to be super fun. So that is this Saturday right before our big event at Lakeside Ashland, our debate watch. But also they've got events going on all summer. So this Friday tonight, they are showing the Batman movie. That's going to be really fun. I think next week up, they've got Barbie, and later in the month, they're showing Apollo 13. Yeah. So you can check them out at lakesideashland.com. Buy your tickets right online, and you kind of get like one of those ticket scanner codes, I think, and on your phone, and you just drive right in. You can buy your unlimited popcorn and soda, and it's fun for your family.
We had our inaugural experience with the kids and grandkids a couple of weeks ago, and man, I'm telling you, the whole experience is great. It's just a wonderful venue. I just can't get over the great time the kids had. They started out on the playground, and then they watched some of the movie Little Mermaid, and then they ran around with other kids. And I mean, it was just a big, and a lot of folks enjoying the movie started talking to one another. They were hanging out, beforehand and during. It was like a big community party.
Like our debate watch is going to be. We've even got some, I think, we got people from both sides of the aisle. We've got bipartisanship at our debate watch. And I think, Hannah, we have more than 100 people already registered now, but spots are still limited.
Yeah.
So we do. And can we break some news this morning about we're working on some merch, friends, and it's been a while. And Hannah looks at me like maybe we shouldn't break it just yet. But let me tell you, you're going to want to get there early.
I did tease yesterday there might be some, I hate to use the word exclusive, but some new merch potentially maybe coming.
But when you said exclusive, I thought you meant maybe Hauswirth was going to show up in his Speedo. I'm not sure.
Exclusive in that it's going to be limited, so you're going to want to get there early. We're also doing some fun contests. So one of our contests we're going to be doing is Best Political T-shirt. We've got some cool prizes to give away.
And Marsh is going to be hard to beat.
Yeah. Are we doing a mustache competition?
Ooh.
Stay tuned.
Best mustache? All right. Well, we are excited and, of course, thankful to Lakeside Ashland for helping us make that event possible. And yeah, it's going to be a great night. So you do need to register, get on the website, fill out our form. So let us know that you're coming. And we'll be updating. We've got a Facebook event page. We'll be updating that today, actually, with some names of some of the candidates that are going to be there. So, if you haven't met those people, you can meet them there. The other thing, Hannah, I think we're expecting some of our regular guests. I know you guys hear for people like Scott Fawn every Monday, and I think he's planning to be there. So it might be fun for you to put a face with the name and interact with some of folks that that are other people outside of the folks who are here this morning that are part of the fam.
Maybe we can get Scott to give away one of his patented steins of knowledge that night.
Yes,
I don't know. He seems to enjoy being the only one that holds the stein of knowledge.
He's something else. Well, DeCarlin Seawood held his State of the City address yesterday, and well attended. Brian Hauswirth was there. And was any news made, Brian? I know you already have some stuff up with more to come on the website, but was any news made?
Yes, for sure. There's no question about it. I've got a couple of stories up 93.9theeagle.com primarily, but I'll have a few of these that would work in both markets as well on the KWS website. It is I call it a smorgasbord of news. It's one of the rare times that get a chance to actually talk to the city. We can talk to them, but it's not usually with all the department heads right there where they're all available. I mean, this is something that I really think I'd like to see them do more of. But, he talked literally probably about 40 different topics during his address. There were 2 videos. But I'd say there were 2 main highlights, Randy, and that would be, and there were a lot of other things that were discussed in there, but to me it was community violence and the Office of Violence Prevention and the issue of affordable housing. And those are 2 unrelated issues, but very important. I've talked about it before. I'm going to give the number again, and it'll probably shock some of you, but I get the numbers every month from the Columbia Board of Realtors, and the average price of a home sold in Columbia in April was $396,000. Now I want people to hear that again. For those of you in the back, the average price of a home in Columbia sold for $396,000. I've asked this question to our listeners. How many of you can afford a $396,000 home?
What's the 30-year note payment on a $400,000 house? I mean, it's thousands of dollars,
Well,
especially with the interest rates.
And Fred Perry and I have talked about this. It wasn't all that long. The average price was $150,000 to $175,000. Our prices in Columbia actually are higher in some cases, Stephanie, than St. Louis or Kansas City. We know that. Carlin Seawood used a term. I haven't heard him use this before. He used it in public yesterday. He says Columbia is grappling with a housing crisis. Direct quote from him from the podium. And he said that they've got to do something about it. There's a shortage of affordable housing. So that was a big one. And then I asked him about the crime, the White Castle shooting. And and people have heard some of those sound bites. But those would be the two main highlights. Roll carts came up. There were some videos, lots of positive things. But we have challenges.
I had a patient
Monthly payment on that would be almost $2,000, assuming you had 20% down.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
I had a patient come in the other day and just wants to rent a place and said it's outrageous, the prices for just a little studio. If you can find one. It's almost like a hotel room. Or they're being asked, if he calls wherever some agents, they're being asked to just move in with some college kids. I mean, it's amazing.
And you don't want to do. People need their privacy. They want to have their
this
their
guy's
own.
working locally.
I don't think he's probably going to want to move in with college students. That's just.
There's nothing wrong with college students,
nothing
but
wrong
if you're
with
out
it,
in the work world,
they want to be by themselves. I mean, But no, those were the, and I've got those up there on the website. I think I should mention one other thing that he told me, and you referenced this when you came in this morning when I asked him about the violence, and you read a quote in the Missourian, and they were taking that quote from the quote that I gave that I asked the question of DeCarlin Seawood, and yes, he did talk about the mental health component. But he also talked about many other things, including looking at how people are being charged. How do we ensure that we don't have repeat offenders back in our community? So that's a question listeners are wanting to know. How's this Office of Community Violence Prevention going to work? And we don't really know a lot of details on it yet because first of all, it's got to be funded in the budget. It's not even been formally proposed yet. But that will be something when we get more details in the July budget address, we'll certainly talk
Brian,
about.
I was interested in the way this was reported in other outlets. Right when I looked at the Columbia Missourian, and when they were talking about the crime thing,
she was sitting right next to me.
It was it's working with public health specialists to figure out if there's a mental health component. We need to figure that out, and working with courts. There was something about repeat offenders. I saw an awful lot about this new department that's going to be the criminal violence department, working with the National Institute for Criminal Justice, criminal justice reform. They work with organizations and governments with the aim of reducing incarceration. And why? How does reducing incarceration, how does that help with repeat offenders?
Well,
did he address that?
He did. No, he did not. And by the way, the way that story's reported, I think pretty fair story. By the way,
it wasn't a bad story.
I think your issue is with the city manager, not the reporter.
No, with the city manager.
Okay, that's what I thought.
But
because the story's fair. I mean, I'm using the same quote she's using there. Here's the thing. I'm going to use one example, Randy. We talked about it with David Tyson Smith at the first day of session of the prayer breakfast, and you ask about repeat offenders. The White Castle shooting, the deadly shootout in the middle of the day, he had not far long ago the main suspect had gotten out of prison, and now he is back in prison. So we have seen it in a number of cases where you have people that get out of prison and have to go back for crimes. Yeah. Now, you also have seen where sometimes Lonnie Lockhart Bay is out of prison, a convicted murderer. He's trying to get kids not to go to the gang life and stuff like that. So
yeah, and that's that's the thing. Everyone keeps talking about mental health. I'm sorry. A 17 or 18-year-old that's involved in criminality through the gang culture, that is not mental illness. That person didn't have a daddy or a mommy or a juvie officer to make it clear that you don't break the law and hurt other people and take their stuff when they're 8 or 10 or 12, right? I mean, this is not a mental health issue. This is a behavioral criminal issue There are mental health issues when it comes to our veterans and so forth, but those people stand out in the corner. They're not the ones doing the crime for the most part. I think about the high-profile case with the guy that didn't he just get convicted? That threw the homeless guy that threw the girlfriend or whatever over the rail.
Jesse
he was
Williams.
Convicted, right?
Yes.
He was on parole.
Hadn't he
wasn't
beat someone up or knifed someone at the Quick Mart or something?
No. Here's the thing. John's right. He had just gotten parole. He
just got paroled.
He was convicted of beating an elderly man almost to death in a tent in 2018, and somehow
he had priors.
He had got out of prison 2 months earlier, and then allegedly, he was convicted of it, threw a woman off the bridge, although his defense attorneys were trying to suggest she killed herself by jumping off the bridge. Essentially, that's what they were trying to suggest to the
they
jury.
must work.
A quick question that here for, I think for maybe our Jefferson City family would have an interest in. What did Mr. Seawood say about the homeless situation as it now stands in Columbia and what they're doing? And we get it anecdotally that a lot of those homeless folks are leaving Columbia and headed for the capital city.
It did come up, and Fred Perry and Curtis Varnes asked me about that too when they came back. It was very vague. He talked about the Ashley Street, essentially room at the inn. They're proceeding with the big plan on the business loop. You can see the project right now, but it was very vague. I think we'll probably learn more about that in the budget proposal, if you will. And Randy, I want to make an important point here. You were mentioned the guy that threw the woman off the bridge. You've referred to him as homeless. Yes, he was, but he was more of a convicted felon. It was homeless people. I can now say it a little more because they were scared to go on that podium to testify. It was homeless people that solved that case.
But wasn't he part of the community?
Well, he had just gotten out. Sometimes he was there, sometimes he wasn't. But he was more of a parolee than a homeless person. It was hard to tell even from the testimony whether he was homeless or not. But it was just the point of the matter is we've got a lot of positive things that are happening, and then we've got bad stuff too, but we've got to report both of them. And these addresses were, and we could all ask questions, but there were a lot of reporters there, so a lot of the stuff we got just really quick bullet points from his address.
Here's something that really affects most of us often in Columbia, and that is the bottleneck traffic congestion areas. It's a rapidly growing area. We all know the thoroughfares that just at certain times of the day, it just make you pull your hair out, Anything about that, about some kind of a master street plan or something? I mean, aside from the potholes and stuff. Very
little. He did mention there's a $2.1 million grant from MoDOT for the I-70 Business Loop corridor. They're doing it. He really focused on the bus system. He wants more people to ride the bus. But he did talk about the fact that they are working with MoDOT for I-70, but that's primarily MoDOT funding. Yeah. The city's contributing a little bit, but it's really MoDOT that's doing that project. But no, in terms of traffic, in terms of congestion,
was the discussion around the homeless? Did they recognize that we can talk about the homeless, we can feel sorry for them, we can be angry at them, we can be whatever we want, but what about the businessmen? Was there any empathy and sympathy for businessmen and people who don't want to walk around downtown or other areas when they're trying to do commerce and go about their lives? Any concern for the people that are affected by the homeless? Yes. I mean, I understand the homeless, we got to address it. What about the people affected by the homeless?
Yes, it was mentioned, and it was. What they did is they played a video they played two videos, and one of the videos was from 2 or 3. Under Jill Shaluti, they've established a police homeless outreach team, if you will. Be great to have these team members on. And they showed the video of them going to the various camps. And these officers, they've looked right in the camera. I think Sydney Olson, probably the city spokeswoman, put the video together. They said that what they want to do is try to really work with them to not be homeless, to get a home, if you will, and not really go after them
Our whole country is being rigged right now.
I don't know about y'all, but the cavalcade of emotions that have run through my mind since this verdict came out yesterday have just been like a waterfall. It's been unbelievable. Initially stunned, angered.
Were you actually stunned, though? Like, were you surprised?
I guess I had myself deluded that how could two lawyers be on that jury? And especially with what, by all...
Have you met a New York lawyer?
Yeah, it's Manhattan where they pick the jury pool from, you know?
I mean, they're waking up, they're drinking green juice, they're walking their, dog that they feed, $20 a meal food.
Granola, as you would say, Randy.
They have just banners on the side of their multi-million-dollar Chappaqua homes.
Exactly.
Are they dinks?
Probably. Or they're in some sort of like polyamorous thing.
Oh, no.
But I don't know.
There we go. Talk about your Long Island, right?
Does Andrew Weissman have a man crush on them if they're a male? I'm just saying. That guy, boy, I don't want to go there. I tried to Wikipedia him. That was the most slimy thing. I have a man crush on him. Very effeminate, I have a man crush on him. Oh my God, on Judge Mershon. This whole thing is just. You want to be, I don't know about y'all, but I want to be a trusting person. I want my default attitude when I meet someone as I start to do business with them or relate to them, and however I do, I want to make a good faith assumption that people are going to be honest or try to be decent. Not everyone gets it right all the time, but people are going to act in good faith. I just don't get it. I don't know.
Quickly here, we have John on the texter saying that there's a head-on crash at Grindstone and Bluff Creek in Columbia.
Okay.
So avoid the area if you're able.
Thanks for the news. It's my pleasure to meet you in person. I saw you speak at one of the Commerce Breakfast on Homelessness last year, and was impressed by that presentation, but it's good to meet you. So a little bit of some controversy, I think, that was stirred up yesterday. Cherie Tolson-Rice, who's circulating a petition, Representative Rice, to embody this the legislation that was passed and get things done the way she sees it, said that there were some things in what passed or what was going to pass that were not representative of what the legislature intended with their modified legislation concerning this matter. What passed, and what say you in response to what Cherie said?
Well, I appreciate you having me on. It's important that we address these baseless accusations because I'm afraid that they will prevent seniors from seeking tax relief. And her claims are completely baseless. So she is claiming that this is a watered down version because of exemptions that exist under 4A. So the General Assembly created 2 new statutory exemptions in Senate Bill 756. There are 2 constitutional exemptions that have always existed. That is the Blind Pension Fund, as well as voter-approved bond indebtedness. And the reason why those have to exist in a policy is because they receive their authority through the Missouri Constitution, specifically the Blind Pension Fund, Article 3, Section 38B, and voter-approved bond indebtedness in the Missouri Constitution under Article 6, Section 26B. And so those are constitutional exemptions we have to put in there. But Boone County is not alone in creating those exemptions. There have been 11 other counties who have taken action on adopting this policy. I've only had the chance to look at 7 of those policies at this point. All 7 of those policies include exemptions for the Blind Pension Fund as well as bond indebtedness. Those include Clay County, Taney County, St. Charles County, St. Louis County, St. Louis City, Jackson County, and most importantly, Platte County. And the reason why I say most importantly Platte County is because Platte County is the home of Senator Tony Luetkemeyer. Senator Luetkemeyer was the champion of this issue for several years. He was the sponsor of Senate Bill 190. He was the Senate sponsor of Senate Bill 756. The cleanup legislation was passed this last year. Tony is a smart guy. He's a good attorney. He has a keen attention to detail. He knew he was in control of everything that went into the statute, but also on the Platte County website, where he thanks them for adopting this policy. It says about 4 paragraphs down on their website, it says, "I'm grateful for the Commission's action implementing Senate Bill 190. It goes on to say it's important for them to take action on this issue. In the very next paragraph, Platte County is explaining why they have to exempt public bonds because of the state constitution. So, these claims are baseless. She's grasping at straws, trying to undermine this program that we're seeking to implement, and we will continue to move forward with implementing.
But explain the timing to me, because it does seem a bit bizarre, because I thought, we were waiting until we got this new bill because we needed the new bill for clarification. Now the bill's passed, but it's not effective until August. But then we raced in just this week to try to do something now. And so is the position of the commission that the new bill and the clarifications in that new bill apply to the ordinance, or was there a reason you needed to get in and get this ordinance done before the new bill went into effect?
There's absolutely 100% reason why we needed to move quickly. And we've been talking about this the entire time when we've been having public hearings. I distributed a timeline of events. I'm happy to share that with you guys. The last date on that timeline was May 17th, 2024. That was the end of the legislative session because we needed to see Senate Bill 756 pass. I was confident that that was going to happen. It did. Stephanie, you're an attorney. I don't know what I'm allowed to legally bet, but I would bet my house that the governor signs this bill and it becomes law on August 28th. If we were to wait, as the representative suggested that we do, wait until it becomes effective law and that we're adopting this in September, that leaves only a few weeks for seniors to apply for the program and lock in 2024 as their base tax year. That's unfair to seniors. We're willing to take that risk and move forward quickly, receiving the clarification and truly agreed and finally passed bill. I'm very confident that while the governor has the ability to veto this bill, that he will not, because it is a single subject bill. Missouri Association of Counties was in constant contact with the governor's office throughout the legislative session about this issue and about the state of this bill.
We're talking with Kip Kendrick, the presiding commissioner of Boone County, about the senior citizen property tax freeze. Now, let's bring this down to some brass tacks and really some intelligible news about what it would mean. This exemption, let's say for the pension fund, on someone whose house is assessed at a house that on the market value is $300,000, let's say. What kind of bucks are we talking about that they're not going to save on their property tax as a result of A, the blind pension fund carve out, and B, let's say that there's a bond issue that passes to build, the homeless hotel, except it's in Boone County, not Columbia, something like that. And it's a $10 million bond issue. Are we talking hundreds of dollars, thousands of dollars, tens of dollars? What does it mean?
Well, that all depends on what the voters approve, right? I mean, these taxing jurisdictions are granted authority under the Missouri Constitution to place those questions on the ballot in order to enter into debt, right? Enter into debt. It's public debt. Voters have to approve those general obligation bonds. We do it all the time. And so it depends on what they're seeking. And if voters approve it, on what the potential levy increase would be under that section of that levy. But the larger levies of this, so like Columbia Public Schools, their operating levy for seniors who qualify and apply for this program, that will become frozen for them, right? That operating levy is not going to move for those seniors to participate. And that's the larger portion of it. If there's bond indebtedness that exists that we can exempt, that other counties have taken a similar path to us can't exempt, that has to go to voters to approve. We just don't know. We can't say what the voters are going to do on that.
Well, I gave an example, though. If it was a $10 million thing, someone ought to be able to crunch those numbers and say if it's a $10 million bond for all of Boone County to build, I don't know, some connector road between A and B. I mean, we ought to know what that is, right? What kind of damage that is.
Yeah, yes, correct. I mean, those all get input and calculated in the internal software system that the collector has purview over. And so I'm sure that he could crunch those numbers and produce a scenario like that.
Thank you.
Randy, thanks. Presiding Commissioner Kip Kendrick is our guest again live on 93.9 The Eagle and also News Radio 950 KWS. Our time is 7:16. Commissioner, we appreciate you joining us. It is a bit complicated. I even struggled trying to explain it on air yesterday. I think, and Randy touched on this, and so did you, clearly Representative Tolson Reich's one of her beefs, she has several, is that it does not include levies. This is 4A, Section 2, levies related to any and all voter-approved bond indebtedness from the very, any taxing entity. I mean, that is her big beef. But in general, what she said, you've listened to the interview now on the air, is she basically said yesterday that the commissioners she did say it, that they were deceiving the voters and suggested the commissioners were lying. You heard her say that. Just any response to that?
Yeah, misinformation spreads very quickly. It's easy to make accusations. It's hard to implement complex systems, and this is a complex system. There's a lot of variables that go into ad valorem taxes. It's very easy to throw around baseless accusations like that. It is, and it's going to scare seniors away from applying for tax relief, and that's unfair. What Boone County is doing is absolutely in compliance with Senate Bill 756 and in compliance with the state constitution, which is critical. We're going to move forward with this program. Seniors are going to be able to apply for it, and seniors will benefit as a result of it. I don't know how else to respond to that. I mean, yes, it's hard for me to come on and have to correct misinformation, but it's also part of today's world we live in.
And I sense, Commissioner, you're frustrated.
Well, we've been very consistent throughout. We stated from the beginning that we needed to wait and see what the General Assembly would do. That wasn't a sit back on our heels and wait and see. That was, we were acting along the way. I was surprised to learn yesterday that the representative told us that she has not talked to Senator Luetkemeyer about this issue, about his legislation, either Senate Bill 190 or Senate Bill 756. She put out a call to him She worked and said he didn't return it. She works in the same building with him. She couldn't walk down the hall and have a conversation with him. Our Missouri Association of Counties lobbyists have been communicating with Senator Luetkemeyer throughout. We're very appreciative of Senator Luetkemeyer taking the lead on this and providing the clarity with the cleanup legislation that we needed, that counties across the state of Missouri needed. And as soon as they provided that clarity, at around 1:30 p.m. on May 17th, we sent out a press release saying that we would move forward with the coming weeks to adopt a policy. In 2 weeks, less than 2 weeks, we adopted the policy.
Commissioner, we got a question from one of our texters this morning, which is a good question. She or he says, a husband and wife own the home. The wife is way younger than 62. Would they still qualify for the program?
Yes, they would. They would qualify as the individual who is of eligible age. Their name would be on the application that they would apply. Yes.
All right. On another issue, you did pass yesterday tax abatements for requested tax abatements for, I guess, sort of personal property, not capital property, and improvements at the Kraft Heinz facility, right?
Yes.
Okay. Can I ask you a silly question? I mean, I ask a lot of silly questions. I'm going to ask you one, Kip.
Yep.
Those of us who are just small business people, just starting out. I mean, Stephanie's got a trolley company. I got a small business practice, a little small medical practice. How come I can't come and get a tax abatement? You're picking winners and losers, aren't you, man?
Chapter 100, that's all set up through state statute and the requirements on job. The required number of jobs are part of state statute. The Kraft Heinz, it's a multinational corporation. There's no doubt about that. It's a large one. But they have a plant here that's been in operation since 1980s with 450 employees. Kraft Heinz was making arguably real threats that they're considering moving that plant to another facility. In 2015, we saw the same thing. It was between the plant continuing in Columbia and the plant continuing in Wisconsin. Boone County's Columbia's plant won out. They kept the plant here. They shut down the other plant. It's not necessarily pleased with how this is framed in front of us, but if it maintains 450 jobs, which we're not sure that it will, but if it maintains 450 jobs and high-paying jobs for families, then that's important to Boone County.
I have empathy for you because, it sounds like you're being extorted. That's another way of putting it in my terms. But, do you have empathy for the fact that individuals and business owners have to make up the difference for what these big businesses don't pay?
Yeah, so this is new property tax that they will be paying, right? They will be paying an abated portion on new investments to the facility. Their plan is to invest $92 million if they decide to keep the plant open. And so they will be paying new taxes on it, an abated portion of that. Part of the Chapter 100 process is certainly it's important for the commission to receive input from the taxing jurisdictions that are impacted, and they
in that interview. I apologize.
It's all right. I'll go find another leaf for you to turn over on
we're
Monday.
running. We'll have to wait till the fall.
No, I took a lot of you-know-what on this show a couple weeks ago for stating my love of Kraft macaroni and cheese and hot dogs. Okay.
You took a lot of heat.
I ran a Twitter poll, and it got a couple hundred votes, and the majority of folks said that it was delicious and not disgusting. So all y'all that were giving me a hard time are wrong. But I actually had that for lunch yesterday.
Yummy.
And some of the coworkers in the office were giving me a hard time. So I put it on Facebook. I said, ketchup, hot dogs, and macaroni and cheese.
Ooh,
I'll go-
ketchup?
Yes.
Oh.
Ketchup goes on most things.
Oh.
Dear Stephanie.
Stephanie's like, ew.
So I put up on the Wake Up in Missouri Facebook page, are there any weird food combinations that you love and that others think are weird or gross?
Who doesn't like corn in their mashed potatoes? What a
Me.
great
That's
combo.
good.
That's a good. You don't like that?
My sister is like, I don't like casseroles. Like, it's a thing. I think there's a word for it where, like, you don't really like your food touching.
How do
And
you live in the Midwest and not like casseroles?
I like some, but in general, I prefer my food to be
I'm generally
separated.
like you. Absolutely, Stephanie. If a little bit of sauce from one dish, one part gets into the other, I go crazy. But something about corn and mashed potatoes, it's good.
How about that?
Now,
John, you like that? Any
My
favorite?
dad's go-to was, you want to talk about weird stuff? Peanut butter, mayonnaise, and lettuce sandwiches.
Oh, that's disgusting.
That sounds very Presley-esque.
on the Wake Up in Missouri Facebook page, there were lots of peanut butter concoctions. There was, let's see, peanut butter, bologna, jelly,
Ooh.
and tomato all on a sandwich, or a pickle,
Whoa.
sorry. So peanut butter, jelly, bologna, and pickle sandwich.
Ooh.
Kirk says that's his favorite combo.
Nope.
All of that between two pieces of bread?
I guess
They know what happened here, and everybody knows what happened here.
Well, Donald Trump has his opinion about the verdict that convicted him of 34 counts yesterday in a Manhattan court. And we thought we need to check in with someone who knows a little bit about prosecution and the right way to do things. And none other than Andrew Bailey, Missouri's Attorney General, joins us now on Wake Up Mid-Missouri. General Bailey, your reaction. I mean, this shook the world yesterday. What did it do to your thinking?
Well, this is a dark day in the history of our republic. I mean, the Democrats have let the genie out of the bottle here. The real victims are the American people, because now every president and any of his supporters can be targets for lawfare. This is what a banana republic looks like. This is how third world countries operate without the rule of law and the protections of due process and the Sixth Amendment right to a fair trial in a criminal proceeding. This is laughable. In New York City, crime is rampant. And instead of prosecuting actual criminals, Alvin Bragg, in coordination and collusion with the Biden administration's crooked Department of Justice, trumps up an illicit witch hunt prosecution, bending the law to meet facts that are not in and of themselves criminal, and then has a judge go along in lockstep to deprive President Trump of his civil rights and obtain this illegal conviction. And it's not going to stand, but it accomplished its goal. And the goal was always to take President Trump off the campaign trail.
Well, there's no doubt about it. I mean, it's a serious problem that I think sets a precedent. But, we were talking about it earlier, General Bailey, and that is, man, I don't know. I think people of good faith that want to do the right thing in the role of having that power at whatever level you're at to use lawfare, is it really the right thing to do? I mean, is it could that lead to a downward spiral in our very democracy? I think that's a tough question that fair-minded people of good faith and well-meaning people must be struggling with, no?
No, I think that's absolutely right. And that's why I say the real victims are the American people. This will put us in a death spiral with endless attempts at retribution by bending the law to achieve political objectives. And that's what happened here. We used to be a nation of rules, and we would elevate those rules above the players of the game and the outcomes, because the rules matter. And that's a rule of law principle. And the left has clearly abandoned and jettisoned that approach because they hate Donald Trump more than they love our country.
General, I talked to a former staffer at the AG's office just yesterday as the verdict came down when we were both at the gas station. And I asked him the question. I said, do you think the judge will order jail time? And obviously, you sort of hit on the white-collar crime angle and thought it was pretty slim at that. But he did comment. He thought that any jail time or even house arrest would play pretty darn well with the ever-Trumpers out there.
Yeah, I think that, like I said, the goal has always been to take President Trump off the campaign trail. They achieved that objective. I would think sentencing would be set out 45 to 60 days. And then, this is the sort of crime for which, first of all, let me say this. There was no crime here. To the extent that this could be characterized as a crime, this would be a probationary offense. But, again, they're so hell-bent on attacking Donald Trump and depriving the American voting public of access to a presidential candidate that's been rigged from day one. It would not surprise me at all if there was jail time. There should be a stay of that jail time and an appeal bond posted while the Court of Appeals figures it out. But look, this is poison in the well of a Trump second administration. When Trump gets elected president again, he's going to be dealing with this for the first year and a half, 2 years of his presidency. I mean, again, they have thrown poison in the well that we'll be drinking water from for the next several years.
Now, what do you say? Because yesterday I was personally disappointed to see a lot of conservative Twitter saying eye for an eye, that now it's on Republican elected officials like yourself to start prosecuting and going after Democrats and doing the same type of lawfare. I assume you might get some pressure from folks and say, now it's your turn to go do the same thing to the Democrats that they're doing to us. What's your response?
Well, we absolutely need to be vigorous in our retribution against those who would bend the rules and break the law to achieve a political objective. But let me be careful in what I'm saying here. What I'm not saying is we're going to behave like the Democrats and break the rules. What I am saying is that, again, the genie is out of the bottle, and I understand why people are upset. I understand why even reasonable people can look at this and say, this is not fair. This is not what our country was founded upon. They broke the rules to obtain this conviction. We need to be able to demonstrate to the left that this is a bad idea and that there are consequences for this kinds of actions within the confines of the rule of law, so we don't further damage this country.
You also tweeted yesterday, I will use every legal tool available to ensure Missourians are not deprived of their right to vote for a presidential candidate. So not only, we've heard from you this morning about keeping Trump off the campaign trail, but to talk to me more about this tweet in particular.
Well, I think what's going on here, again, is that the left is using lawfare to weaponizing the criminal justice system, weaponizing the civil justice system as well. Let's not forget the civil trial against President Trump brought by Letitia James in the state of New York. That they're using the judicial system in targeted blue venues where they know they can obtain these illicit convictions, illicit judgments, to deprive Missourians or voters who want to vote for President Trump of access to their candidate. The state of Colorado booted him off the ballot. The United States Supreme Court fixed that problem. But we're seeing all sorts of unique and illegal ways in which the left is attacking a political opponent and depriving Missourians who want to vote for President Trump of access to him. And I'll say this, the nadir of depravity, it outpaces kind of the reasoned approach to the law that we've traditionally used. And so we've got to remain vigilant.
We're talking with Attorney General Andrew Bailey. We have a texter who thanks Andrew for his time on Hannity yesterday. So a shout out for Andrew Bailey there. I got to ask you a question. If Lady Justice is blind, and if we aren't judges and courts are not supposed to put their fingers on the scales of justice, and if one of our founding pillars, our very foundation of this republic is justice served through our justice system, why do certain courts, and in this case, Judge Marchand, why are they so afraid of having the trial being shown on television? What's that all about?
Yeah, the court system has long held unique processes when it comes to public access. Certainly the public has access to the courtroom itself, but in which ways the media can provide additional access. Those have always been governed by state laws and state court rules. But let me say this: there's some other problems here from the perspective of the bench, from the perspective of the judiciary when it comes to this particular trial. Number one, the gag order. A gag order is intended to protect the defendant's right to a fair trial. Well, if President Trump wants to waive that right and speak publicly about his criminal proceeding, potentially attaching more liability to that, he should be allowed to do that. And there should be heightened scrutiny. There's a presumption against gag orders because they violate the First Amendment right to free speech. There's a presumption against them. There should be heightened scrutiny for any gag order against a presidential candidate in the middle of a campaign. So there should have never been a gag order. Number two, the jury instructions. Oh, my gosh, I've never heard of such a trial where they don't give the juries the law itself. How can the jury remember 34 different counts and apply the facts to the law if they can't see the law? So not giving the jury instructions was intended to throw everything against the wall and see what stuck, and any old thing can be a basis for a guilty verdict, which leads me to my next point. The lack of jury unanimity as to the predicate offense. Since 2020, the case of Ramos v. Louisiana has stood for the proposition that the Sixth Amendment requires jury unanimity in criminal cases. And yet here, the court said, hey, any old predicate offense you want can be the basis of criminal liability. It creates a roving commission where the jury is free to roam through the facts as it pleases and attach liability wherever it suits its fancy. I mean, this thing was rigged from day one. As Stephanie will tell you, one of the most egregious offenses during the closing argument was when the prosecutor himself got up and started testifying to facts not in evidence. That's one of the first objections you learn in evidence class, and yet the judge overruled that. So this case is replete with error that'll be the basis for appeal and is further evidence of the fact that this was an illicit witch hunt designed to harm a political opponent, not to obtain a legally valid conviction.
General, if you were the one tasked with handling the appeal, other than those angles, and those are a bunch of them, what would you pursue?
Well, all of those angles, plus the illicit motivations of the prosecutors themselves. Prosecutors cannot be self-interested in the case. Alvin Bragg has a history of being involved in civil litigation against President Trump when he worked for Letitia James, and then he campaigned on a promise to prosecute President Trump as a political ploy. So he's self-interested, should have been disqualified. And then Matthew Colangelo, the former third-ranking official in Biden's crooked Department of Justice who leaves his high-paying DOJ job, is a former DNC operative and is now leading the prosecution team for Alvin Bragg in the courtroom in Manhattan. I mean, again, these guys, they're putting enormous liability on their professional licensure. They're exposing themselves to civil liability for violating President Trump's civil rights, potential criminal liability if they broke the law. But at a minimum, they're injecting reversible error. That should be a foundational basis for appeal.
Now, Attorney General, this is producer Hannah. I know last time I asked a very important question about my student loan debt forgiveness.
Yes.
I will let you off of the hook this time because I am sure you're working diligently on that behind the scenes. But most important question of the morning, the question of the day is, are there any weird food combinations that you like? Because I took some heat a few weeks ago on the Wake Up Facebook page for liking macaroni and cheese with hot dogs and ketchup on it. You told me off air you didn't think it was that weird. Is there another?
Hold on. You didn't tell me about the ketchup. When you add the ketchup, that makes it weird, Hannah. I'm sorry. Like hot dogs in the mac and cheese, I can kind of get to that point, but man, you start adding ketchup, that's a different level, Hannah.
Well, all right. Maybe I should have just, not mentioned the ketchup. But are there any weird food combinations that you like? Help me out here.
I love hot sauce on everything. I mean, literally from eggs and hash browns to spaghetti. I eat hot sauce on everything. Not sweets, but anything other than dessert. I'm going to eat hot sauce on it.
Should we ask the general what his favorite MRE variety was?
Oh gosh, the jambalaya, definitely the jambalaya. Yeah, you got that little Tabasco container. So yeah, that's good stuff.
Well, and as a parent, I always feel like I'm cleaning up everyone's plates after dinner anyway, so I end up with a lot of weird food combinations. I'm sure you've done that too.
I feel like putting hot sauce on everything is not that different from putting ketchup on everything, but I digress.
It is. It is.
Well, A.G. Bailey, I have to tell you, I think many people I've talked to in the wake of this whole trial, it started in the indictment. A lot of people are really wary of whether the justice system, how we tend to generalize that us that are not in the system. A lot of people are very worried about their day in court, no matter what level it's at. And I know that you and other people involved in the legal system, whether it's state, local, federal, I think really now have a tall charge to try to reassure America that, in fact, the justice system works.
Well, I think you're right. I think our entire political structure, our entire legal structure lacks credibility because of President Biden and because of his weaponization of the criminal justice system against President Trump, because President Biden's federal overreach, all the instances like student loans where he's violating constitutional principles, violating the plain text of statutes. Look at our southern border. He refuses to enforce the law and perverts the law to allow more illegal aliens to cross that southern border. How can anyone take the legal system seriously when you've got the chief executive of the United States of America who ignores the law and abuses the law? So, yeah, I mean, this has done enormous damage to our country, does enormous damage to the credibility of the legal structure of our country and certainly to the justice system.
Well, good comments, and thank you for joining us. We appreciate your analysis on this historic day after. I mean, unbelievable. Just unbelievable.
Keep me posted on my loan debt, Attorney General.
Okay.
I'll let you know. We'll celebrate with some hot dogs and mac and cheese.
Yes.
Right. Thanks, A.G. Bailey. Appreciate it.
He is like a battery, so energy used is energy lost. So he doesn't like to exercise too much. We do need to point out, fair is fair. He was an athlete, played baseball in high school, and played squash in his college years at Fordham, and still finds time to golf. Germs are worse than exercise. He has called the tradition of shaking hands barbaric and says, yes, I'm a clean hands freak. I thoroughly wash my hands, and I do it as much as possible. Also has a preference for drinking with straws, eating pizza with a fork, only eats red or pink Starbursts, and Hannah, he will eat a well-done KC strip only if it's slathered with ketchup. Sleep puts you at a disadvantage, according to the former president. He says, I don't sleep more than 4 hours a night. I sit up all night and presumably plan my appeal. And finally, hair is hugely important. There was a photo shoot for Vanity Fair. Donald Trump had a $2,500 Loro Piana cashmere sweater cut off of him because he didn't want to mess up his hair. But the Donald's hair said to be light years ahead still of Joe Biden's due. So there are up notes to everything, and now you know the rest of that story.
Wow, Trump and I have something in common with the 4 hours of sleep a night.
And the ketchup.
Yeah, but see, if you get a steak that's well done, it needs ketchup at that point. If it's cooked correctly, it shouldn't.
Yeah, I'm surprised he's eating steak well done. That's a terrible
well
thing to do.
Well done, and a dozen Diet Cokes a day to wash it down
big
with.
Diet, yeah, that'll keep you up. You drink that much caffeine with your Diet Coke, certainly it'll keep you up.
You'd be lucky to get 4 hours of sleep.
Yeah. Well, there'll be a lot of Diet Coke flowing, I know, at the Lakeside Ashland when we get together on June 27th. I hope everyone is getting online and registering, whether it's on our Wake Up Mid-Missouri page or, the 93.9 The Eagle or KWS.com. A lot of opportunities there, but I know slots are going, right? We have limited space, right, Hannah?
Yeah, we've already heard from lots of Wake Up family members that they are planning on attending, which is great. The website has not crashed completely, not like Trump's campaign sites yesterday, but spots are filling up, so please get your name in. And
if you haven't been out there, it's fun to just get out there and enjoy one of the movies that are upcoming. What is it, Batman tonight, I think? And is it the Barbie then next week? So a lot of good stuff happening there at the Trump and you're looking at his bank account in the campaign, maybe it's not so bad.
Yeah, I think he's going to be feeling pretty good about those fundraising numbers, since they actually, we teased y'all about breaking our website registration form for our debate watch. Y'all actually broke Trump's donation page yesterday.
Well, joining us to weigh in on his analysis, his thoughts in the wake of this historic verdict, is Kurt Schaefer, former state senator and, of course, candidate for U.S. Congress in the 3rd District. How you doing, Kurt? Welcome in.
I'm doing good. Not a very good feel-good Friday. Thanks for having me on again. Yeah, I mean it's unprecedented, and I think as a lawyer and somebody who really understands the concept of a country that is founded on the rule of law, where you have to have a judiciary that is above reproach to maintain that principle, to keep your values in your society. We saw that go out the window yesterday for the first time ever. And when you look at the fact of, the Democrats, all the BS election interference crap that was thrown out there in 2020, which all turned out to be bogus. And now right in front of our eyes in real time is real election interference. It's absolutely insane. And I know you guys know this. I'm a former state and federal prosecutor, and I've prosecuted public corruption cases. And both the Attorney General's office and the U.S. Attorney's office, where I worked on cases, there was a rule that if you had a public corruption case and it was any time near an election, unless it was something that dealt with public safety, like somebody had committed a violent crime, for example, you waited to bring those charges, not just try the case. You waited to bring the charges so that you would never even create the appearance of interfering with an election for fear of the harm, the irreversible harm that would do to the integrity of your office and the public's belief that you were always doing the right thing for the public and not using the office for political purposes. And to see Democrats not even care about that at this point, it's just, I think it's, for a lot of people it's one thing, for some people it's something else, but I think it's a threshold we've crossed that we've never crossed before, that frankly, unless you have a harsh response, you cannot come back from.
Kurt, I think a lot of us that are non-lawyers, not involved in the system, we generally expect that, as you mentioned, okay, you've prosecuted these types of cases in the past where you're trying to hold people accountable. And normally, at least the reporting we read, it's pretty clear cut. Someone got caught with their hand in the cookie jar. And someone else got hurt as a result. And I think we look at this case against Donald Trump, and it started with the indictment last May. It's like, well, who got injured in the first place? Who really got injured here? There was an NDA and there was a payment made. And, okay, we won't go through the details. But who got hurt in the first place? And secondly, it appears to amateurs like me, and I think many listening, that Bragg and his prosecutors had to play a legal game of Twister, contorting themselves into some kind of a strange, esoteric, exotic theory to get this into the court. And we now are left scratching our heads saying, wow, if people in positions of power can do that for political purposes, we're on the threshold of losing our democracy, aren't we?
Well, absolutely. And I think the other thing, kind of having been on the side of being a prosecutor, and I think the public understands this too, there's so much discretion for a prosecutor to be abusive that you really have to bend over backwards on the other side to show the public that you are never being abusive. But, you raise a good point, and that is, anytime you're doing a criminal case like this, it's kind of like a game of chess. You've got to think out several moves in advance, and that goes to everything from, how you're going to present your case to the timing of your case. And so I think, look, I'll tell you this. The one thing that I did when I was in the Missouri Senate is I used the investigative power of the Senate on two different occasions. I used it to investigate Planned Parenthood. I subpoenaed witnesses, brought them in. We got great results out of that investigation. And then I used it to investigate the governor's office and the federal government and taking people's concealed carry information and using it to compile a list of gun owners. And we got great results out of that as well to protect people. But, no one had used that power in decades before I did, and no one's used it since. But Congress has that investigative authority. And that's what I'm going to do when I go to Congress, and it's what needs to be done, which is somebody needs to issue subpoenas to this prosecutor, to Biden's office, get the emails, because this didn't just happen. And I guarantee if you're the president of the United States and you're running for re-election, you're not letting a local prosecutor in New York dictate the outcome of your election. You are going to drive that. And you have to have a willing prosecutor to do that. And I'm sure, I have no doubt in my mind that's what happened. But, when that happens, there's a record of that, and that is election interference, and that is a felony. And that needs to be an immediate investigation by Congress to determine who laid this out, who came up with the charges, these bogus charges, which the federal government, the Federal Election Commission, wouldn't even bring. But yet they put it in some state court in New York. And, of course, there's a decision of where to bring it, of when to actually bring the trial, to base it on when you think you're going to get a verdict and then when you're going to do sentencing. So now they're going to do sentencing 4 days before the National Republican Convention. This doesn't just happen. This is all mapped out very carefully. It is coordinated election interference, and it needs to be prosecuted.
Now, let's talk about sentencing. I've never been a prosecutor. I don't practice criminal law, but you've been there, done that. So, it's coming up here really quickly. I've seen, certainly I've seen the take that the judge is so biased, certainly he's going to send him to prison. I've seen takes of, he's a first-time offender. He has no priors. There's no reason he should go to prison. I've seen he's, it's too hard to put him in prison because of the Secret Service and all the logistics. Where are you at on this?
Well, I've thought all along what Democrats wanted to do is get a conviction and then just say all through the election cycle, he's a convicted felon. But if they've gone as far as they've gone already, I'm not so sure that they won't try and sentence him to prison. Now, when you have sentencing like this, Missouri really doesn't have sentencing guidelines like the federal government and some states have. So when you get sentenced in Missouri, there's a lot of discretion for the judge to determine what your punishment is going to be within kind of a broad range. States like New York have sentencing guidelines, which means, does he have any prior convictions? Was it a violent conviction? And those things, all work in in Donald Trump's favor. So certainly looking at the guidelines, New York would not impose a prison sentence. But look, with this judge and the way this was clearly designed to keep Donald Trump out of the election, out of the game, because Joe Biden cannot win this election. They've got the data. Kamala Harris and Joe Biden, either one of them is the presidential candidate, could not win this election. They know it. So they've got to break the rules. They've got to get outside the game theory and do their own thing, and that's what they're doing. So at this point, I think anything could happen. But here, I want to raise this point, too. The country is so polarized right now, in large part because of exactly what the Democrats are doing. And they say, we're on the brink of civil war. Well, if you want to get people worked up, you jack the system up like this, where, look, I've even seen commentators on CNN that are absolute liberals saying this just looks terrible. And I think people know that. And so, is this something that has launched us towards even more polarization? It is. And you don't do that when you're in a position of leadership. But when you're as desperate as Joe Biden for all the failed policies that he has thrown down on this country and people can't live with any longer, this is what you got to do.
Senator Schaefer, we appreciate you joining us live. One of the things that I kept hearing during the trial, at least from some of the people on television, was they were thinking that for the people that supported former President Trump, they were thinking there would be maybe a hung jury, maybe one or two, and they could delay it. Any indication of that, or were they? Because it seemed like they deliberated a long time for convicting him on 34 counts.
Yeah, first of all, I actually did think this would be a hung jury because, remember, this is a criminal case. And when you look at things like the other civil cases they brought against President Trump, that's one thing. And there's certainly, those are distracting and everything else. But that is substantially different than a criminal case where you have the risk of losing your liberty and much higher consequences. And so the abuse, like they've done in this case against President Trump, of the criminal justice system is much, much worse than an abuse of the civil justice system, which frankly is bad, don't get me wrong, but the abuse of the criminal system is worse. I honestly thought, and look, I've tried death penalty cases, I've tried a lot of criminal cases, I've done over 100 criminal appeals. Usually even if you're going to be in a jurisdiction and you do, that's another thing. They picked where they brought this case, and you can certainly manipulate what you think the outcome of your case is going to be on where you bring it based on the population of that jurisdiction. But even in where this case was brought, I think there was a belief that this was so outrageous and such an abuse that you would get at least one person out of 12, which is all it would take, to say, you know what, this just doesn't smell right to me. I don't think you proved your case. But for no one to take that position, and that's somewhat a result of what the judge allowed the prosecutor to say to the jury, what the judge actually said to the jury, and the absolutely outrageous jury instructions that they were given. Nothing gets a criminal case reversed faster by an appellate court than bad instructions. And I honestly believe this case does get reversed on appeal. I think just as much as I saw of the trial, I think there were several points of reversible error, which is what the court looks at. It says the judge made a mistake here that was not fair. It did not provide due process to the defendant. And so I think this case gets reversed. But, the Democrats don't care about that because that won't be until at the earliest sometime late next year, probably even the year after that. So keep in mind, the Democrats got what they wanted in the short term, which was to create more problems, keep Donald Trump out of the game. I firmly believe Donald Trump is going to win this election. And I think that the Democrats actually misplayed this in the long run, because just like you're seeing all those donations come in to President Trump's Win Red site, people know this is wrong. Even people that for one reason or another may not be huge Trump supporters understand this is something that should not have happened. It's dangerous for the country. It sets a precedent that further drives us down this road of division. And so I think it's going to be a backlash. I really, really do.
Well, if I could follow up real quick on that, you mentioned you thought there's going to be, it'll be overturned on appeal. Why can't they expedite that?
Because, even you can, but even expediting a criminal appeal like this, that whole trial transcript has to be transcribed. All of the records have to be put together. There's a whole lot that goes into putting the criminal record, the whole file together, before you can then brief it, because each side gets to brief and then do reply briefs before you ever actually get in front of the appellate court. And that process takes months, even if you expedite it. And I've certainly had expedited appeals, but I don't think I've ever seen one shorter than 5 months or so. And so, could they really do it? Maybe. I don't see that happening. And especially in New York with what you're seeing here. And that's another issue, too. Look at this out in New York. How out of touch is that jurisdiction with the rest of this country that supports Donald Trump? Yeah. It's, and it's just, again, further division.
I tell you, it is a
Technology and communication services were down big. Utilities and real estate were leading the gainers. We don't usually report on specific stocks, but notably Dell, despite having a really good quarter, was down 18% yesterday. So that was notable. But today, the futures are in the green, looking like Dow up 0.15%, S&P 0.26%, NASDAQ 0.13%. So maybe a better day on the markets today. Other kind of yucky news out yesterday, signed sales contracts for existing homes. So that's pending sales contracts fell by 7.7%. That's likely a result of the high mortgage rates. And that is the lowest that it has been since April of 2020. And that was, obviously the pandemic. I saw this tweet out about Cracker Barrel the other day, and I know everyone comes to Wake Up Mid-Missouri for our chain restaurant updates.
Absolutely.
Breaking news.
There's news, but then there's important news.
And if there is Cracker Barrel news, you are going to hear it here first. All right. No, I saw this tweet the other day, and I was wondering what's going on. So I guess earlier this year, the CEO of Cracker Barrel, who's like an MBA gal, just basically said, we're no longer relevant. We need to do some things. And so now we're figuring out a little bit more about what Cracker Barrel wants to do. Apparently, they are going to change their decor.
No.
What? New colors potentially and updated lighting, different seating is what she's saying. They've got some menu changes coming and all of that.
Oh, Brian's chicken and dumplings.
Yeah.
I know. So I think this is making, folks who really like Cracker Barrel really nervous, and people are questioning the CEO's ability to be in touch with the Cracker Barrel fans. And this tweet comes from at Spirit of Pines, I think, who's in the ad business, and said, look, what about a CEO who really loved Midwestern culture? What about pop-up concerts and endorsements by Zach Bryan and Morgan Wallen? Why not lean into Cracker Barrel as the after-church spot and create programs for church groups, including discounts, shuttle buses? He said grassroots has helped so many things like Sound of Freedom and restaurants like Chick-fil-A, these grassroots evangelical supporters. And he's like, why not just lean into that? He said there are so many obvious partnerships, like with brands in NASCAR or country music stars. And I kind of agree with the tweeter, and not with Cracker Barrel saying we got to change our whole MO to get.
How upscale do you want a Cracker Barrel to be?
Why not just double down?
Right.
On Cracker Barrel.
Cut prices.
I mean, you wait forever and you can't get in the place because it's great food, great service. I saw some tweets about service faltering there too.
I think in the business world it's called pivoting, and I think it's some
And boy, there's a lot to cover, probably a couple of segments, but we only have one. So we'll start with John Marsh today. Everyone shudders. Who's going to be called on first? John, you're winner
I don't want to be
loser.
called on first. I always get called on first. No, I've got a couple of winners and I guess a loser. I guess our loser right to the head of it, police officer in Sturgeon, who's now in hot water for shooting the blind and deaf dog there. Now we're hearing today that the city of Sturgeon is going to do an outside investigation to get to the bottom of all that.
As they probably should.
As they should. How about here's 7 winners, 6 skydivers and their pilot on board that small plane out there by Butler. Had engine trouble on the plane. The plane went in, and they were all able to parachute out safely. And our big winners of the week, the Blair Oaks Falcons baseball team, state Class 4A champions after beating Benton yesterday afternoon, 7-2. Another state baseball championship for the Falcons at Blair Oaks in Wardsville.
All right. That's John Marsh with his winners and losers. Hannah, what are you thinking?
Oh, man,
W&L.
I go next.
Who's in your winner and loser column?
Well, I don't know. I think that Donald Trump could probably be listed as a winner. I know many would probably think he's the loser, but I think he could be winner of the week because I agree with the things that we've heard this morning saying that this probably has won him the election. I am also a winner of the week because Attorney General Andrew Bailey says he's working on my student loan debt relief, and he said that hot dogs and macaroni and cheese is not weird. So, calling myself winner of the week for that one.
From the guy who eats hot sauce on all of his MREs in the Mideast.
You know what? I'll take what I can get.
And don't forget, as one texter said, top that off with a little ketchup, Hannah. That makes it perfect, right?
Yeah, ketchup on everything.
There you go. Stephanie, who you got for W&L?
I don't know that I have a lot of losers. I've got a winner in that there was a Missouri 5th grader who raised enough money to pay off his entire school's meal debt.
That's cool.
Oh, I
And
saw
I
this.
think his name was Dakin Kramer, and he raised $7,300. His original goal was just $3,500. And I think anytime we can come together and just do friends helping friends, neighbors helping neighbors, and especially instilling that in our kids, I think that is super cool. I also need to grab the name we had the National Spelling Bee this week, and I think there was a Missouri student who made it very far, and I need to find out what the last word was because my spelling, I don't know, is terrible. And these kids are so good. And although the Missouri student didn't win, they went like to the final round, so that's good, and we'll find their name here in a sec.
And the word he was that spelling, I'm not even sure how to pronounce the word, much less spell it. I mean, I need to buy a vowel, I believe, for that.
There you go.
Yeah.
All right. Brian, who's on your list?
I've got 3 winners, no losers this week, but 3 winners. First of all, Union Station in St. Louis. My mother had her 80th birthday. Everybody knows she's having a number of health issues, and we were able to get her out of a wheelchair and into they had a Ferris wheel there. Their staff could not have been kinder to go over and above the call of duty to get her into that Ferris wheel. And I'm very appreciative of those gentlemen. And there was a lady there, too, that helped her, and also into the aquarium as well. So thank you to those folks. Just absolutely a gorgeous Ferris wheel and aquarium, by the way. I've got 2 other winners here, and that is Kip Kendrick and Cherie Tolson Reich for I think the fact that they both came on separate days and explained this very complicated issue. And, obviously our listeners will, decide for their own which side they agree on. But the fact they both came on was significant. We appreciate that. And last but not least, the Centralia Anchor Festival is starting tonight.
Yay.
I'm going to give everybody a hint. My doctor's probably listening, so doctor, you'll want to tune out for a second. I'll let him tune out for a second. Randy works with my doctor.
I'll turn my headphones off.
Folks, the most world famous funnel cakes you will ever find anywhere are in Centralia, Missouri. I got to go to the MBA tomorrow at the Lake of the Ozarks, but if I wasn't, I'd drive up to Centralia.
Just don't even check your blood sugars for after
oh my
that.
God,
Okay,
they're
don't
so
do-
good though. So the Centralia funnel cakes are a winner of the week, and they are dynamite.
Well, and you
All right.
also, after the funnel cake sugar has worn off, you also got to stop and get a world famous dumpling from the softball stand.
That's
The Centralia
true.
softball team, they make them every year.
They do. They
You
do
know,
a
there have
fabulous
been
job.
pictures on our Facebook feed of me eating fair food. So Hannah and I are going to be at Anchorfest. We'll post our menu later on the on the Facebook feed.
That is awesome.
Look for us in the parade. You can't miss us.
Here's the name I was looking for. So, of the entire nation, 148 students went to the National Spelling Bee in the quarterfinals, and Anya Shetty of Columbia. 4 Missouri students made it, and 1 from Columbia, Missouri. So, winner of the week, Anya Shetty out of Columbia, who has mastered what I consider now a lost art of spelling.
Oh, it's a lost art, and he did a great job. That's fantastic.
I think the loser of the week is DA Alvin Bragg. I think he embarrassed himself. I mean, even liberal-minded reporters have been commenting, along with Juan Mershon. I think the prosecution was from the get-go flawed. I think that anyone who's analyzed that, whether they're a liberal or a conservative lawyer, is questioning the whole notion. And of course, Judge Mershon, I think we're gonna make them co-losers. And we can lock them up.
Co-losers.
Wow.
And we can
about
lock
that?
them up in our virtual jail that we have here on the station.
I'm sure they'll appeal, though.
Yeah, well, and since I'm the judge, they'll lose. Now, and you know who else is a loser? Robert Hur, Special Counsel Robert Hur, who chose to use prosecutorial discretion and not go after Joe Biden when he said he was guilty, but he didn't prosecute him because he felt sorry for his agedness. That's a loss. He should have done that. I mean, at this point, with the rules the way they are, he didn't play by the new rules, which are gladiator rules legally. And I know, Stephanie, you may disagree with me, but I think those are the rules. We're going to take the gloves off, and by golly, time to do that. And Robert Hur is a loser for being a nice guy in a system that you only lose when you're a nice guy until America's culture and morality and values change. Now, as far as winners, listener Randy. Okay,
I wonder why you picked
Listener
him.
Randy, Hannah picked this out. Randy, Hannah wants to recognize you. Just kidding. Finally paid off his student loans this week. Caveat, without Biden's unlawful assistance. and my favorite winner of the week is my daughter Shannon, who out at Fort Bragg won Volunteer of the Year award. You know, she was leading.
That's awesome.
That's at the U.S. Army John F. Kennedy Specialty Warfare Center. The PSYOPs group, the Special Forces group out there, and she has done a lot. The first day that she was head of that little support group for all of the wives of the Special Ops trainees, she took and said, "Here's my cell phone." Actually, she was talking to the trainees themselves. She said, "Guys, and a few gals, take my cell phone and make sure that your wives or your husbands know about that and give me a call if they're struggling." And she set a precedent now. And so my congratulations to daughter Shannon.
That's awesome.
For being Volunteer of the Year out there at Fort Bragg. So there you
Very
go.
cool.
You know,
Who on to Shannon?
You mentioned, and congratulations to her. You mentioned,
I said Fort
but
Bragg. It's Fort Liberty.
the prosecutor,
Fort Liberty.
up there, prosecutor Alvin Bragg. You know, last night I was waiting for Nightline. You have to wait for Nightline to come on. Jimmy Kimmel is on before that. He must have done 15 minutes on monologue on Kimmel on former President Trump.
Trump bashing?
Oh, gosh. Very negative. And I thought back to Ronald Reagan. I thought back to Johnny Carson. And I thought back to, do you remember, we're old enough, Randy, do you remember Saturday Night Live actually had former President Ford?
Yep.
Yes. On the set, and John Belushi and Dan Aykroyd, and I doubt very seriously they were conservatives. They were in tuxedos and they welcomed the president. It's just, it is a different era. But it had to be
Chevy Chase and his impression of Gerald Ford where he'd fall down all the time.
But President Ford liked that, and actually Chevy Chase, when President Ford died, wrote an editorial in the front page of the New York Times about what a great man he was, and he helped him beat alcoholism. But it's just the world has changed. I was just really taken aback by the tone.
The
last night.
mean-spiritedness,
there it is.
The vitriol. I said it in the first hour. That Philippians verse just keeps impressing me when Paul urged people to aspire to excellence and honor and truth. And when you do that in your own life, you feel good about it. You feel whole. You feel fulfilled. When you swerve off that and you tell even a little white lie, think how you feel. And the people that we elect at the various highest levels now, I mean, you've said it before, Stephanie, and I'm sure you say it with your tongue in your cheek, but it's sort of the way of politics now to deceive, to be disingenuous. I hope, I pray that this country's morality will turn around. I really do. Well, here's Alvin Bragg. This is the evidence. What he said yesterday, he misrepresented what the verdict was. Listen to this.
At the beginning of my remarks, we have a phenomenal system. 12 everyday New Yorkers. They listen to the judge's directions. They follow the evidence. You saw them in court every day. They were careful and attentive. And so I feel deep gratitude to work alongside them, to be a part of this system. And I just want to echo that this is what we're doing every single day. I mean, during this trial, just this week, right, a ghost gun indictment, Grimaldi's wage theft plea resolution, sex crimes, convictions, all sorts of work that's being done by phenomenal public servants. So we're before you today on this obviously consequential matter, but this is what we do every day. We follow
what he said. The clip skipped there on me. What he said was that the jury found him guilty of essentially election interference, and that's not what the jury verdict was. But he went to that height to say that, and it's flat out wrong. Yeah. And I know Jonathan Turley and others called him out on that. I mean, talk about prosecutorial indiscretion. I mean, at least have the decency to verbatim say what the verdict was.
Yeah, that election interference, that was not the charge. But to your point, and take out the Trump case notwithstanding, but you asked Stephanie about politics, and can we get back to more civil? John and I are old enough to remember when Democrats and Republicans would go to dinner in Jefferson City. It happened all the time, and it wasn't a lifetime ago, probably 30 to 35 years ago, and got along, didn't agree necessarily on things, but it wasn't nearly as nasty.
And I remember at the
end... Those days are over.
I'd be more... no, there's some crossover, and there's
not
some
very much anymore.
Friendliness amongst... at our state house people, I would say there'd be no love lost amongst the Freedom Caucus and basically
But
anybody
remember
else.
on the last of the session...
I don't see it nearly as much as it used to be.
At the end of the session last year, we had people from the Freedom Caucus and from leadership both accusing the other side of downright lying and making a promise and then breaking it.
Yeah.
You know what? There is a way to change what you've represented as something you'll do. If a fact changes, if you find something new and you're honest about that and you say, look, I said this assuming that this was true. This is not true. I'm going to have to change my stance. I didn't hear that. I hear back and forth Hatfields and McCoys that used to live in the same house added at one another's throats. Not to mention across the aisle.
And then you've got you've got people on Twitter, my goodness, and they blow everything out of proportion. It's different. They didn't. The folks that were pre-term limits didn't have to deal with as much, the negativity. Yeah. Let's just be honest. That's what it is.
Well, let's say, Mira, Brian, you can relate to that era. Things have changed now. If nothing else, that the lobbyists aren't allowed to pick up the tabs for those bipartisan dinners anymore.
Yeah, okay. Well, that's a whole other story. weekend as summer is full underway.
If you're at Anchorfest, look for our Eagle SUV in
Can't
the
miss us.
parade, and Hannah and I will be there, so keep an eye out for us. We'd love to say hi.
Out in Centralia.
That's tonight.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm taking the Ashland girl to Centralia.
All right. Will
so
they
she
treat-
can check out Boone
This
County's
won't-
second biggest city.
Unfriendly confines.
Yeah, this
for
won't
the
be like a
Ashland
Cardinals.
crowd.
This won't be like a Cardinals Cubs game. It'll be okay, right? Will they accept Stephanie? Okay.
I think so.
Okay.
Oh, yeah.
Ashland lady. I mean,
As long as she doesn't wear any like Southern Boone stuff, I think we're good.
Okay.
Don't give me any ideas.
And then of course tomorrow's the big event out at the stadium.
Yeah, the
Tomorrow
9/11
morning.
Memorial Stair Climb starts at 8:00 in the morning at Faroe Field. There's going to be an opening ceremony at 8:00, and then the climb begins. I believe they're still taking registrations for climbers. If you want to, complete the 110 flight stair challenge to honor the first responders that were lost in the 9/11 tragedy. But yeah, that's 8:00. You can also come out and just cheer them on. We're going to have a booth set up there with some station swag. We're going to just be there to hang out. So
We'll say hi to you. Come over and say hi to us and support our fire service community.
And when we talked to organizer Ryan Benedict just a couple of weeks ago, I mean, it's a very, very moving event by all indications. I'm looking forward to taking as much of it in as I can.
yeah, when you register for the climb online, you pick a fallen first responder's name. And when you get there that morning and check in, they give you a lanyard with that person's name on it. And when you complete the stair climb, they hand you the mic and you say that person's name over the loudspeaker.
Wow.
Just to kind of honor them. So I'm looking forward to it. I've heard about this event for lots of years, but this is my first time actually getting to go. So I'm looking forward to it.
And on a programming note, Gary Nolan, coming up right after this program, will be carrying the Donald Trump news conference, which is scheduled for 10 a.m. So they'll join it when they can, and how that all works out with the top of the hour news. They may have to cut in, if it's underway. But if he's a few minutes late, they'll catch the whole thing. But just talk to producer Brian, and they will be doing that. So
Great. Yeah, there's a lot to talk about today, certainly. And then also we'll want you to register for our debate watch, which is coming up June 27th. It's a Thursday night. We're going to be out at Lakeside Ashland doing debate watch. And, after yesterday's news, I think we're all in kind of a funky mood. And so it's a good time to get together and lament and cheer and boo and be with friends. So I hope you'll join us.
I